Welcome everyone to another webinar hosted by AppSheetTraining.com. My name is Clark James. I'm going to be your host today. I am also joined with none other than Landon Quartermont, the most amazing person in the whole world. Landon, please say hello to your fans.
How's it going, guys?
Proud. There he is. Well, guys, I'm going to be honest, we got a good one today. It's going to be a lot of fun. We are going to be going over some UX stuff. But it's going to be for individual users. We're going to be able to hide and show data based on user permissions, and who's going to be able to see them is defined by who is actually signed into that account. So before we jump in, I want to talk about some things that we have available. I believe we have one new path. Landon, can you confirm? I know we have one new path on AppSheetTraining.com. But we might even have two, and I'm pretty sure they're both still on sale, so you definitely want to check those out. If you haven't checked out our new Chrome extension or our expression library, they're both free for anybody. You just have to sign up and make an account, no credit card or anything like that. It's just very, very helpful. Landon can attest. We both use this every day. It is so helpful. So yeah, I would definitely check that out. But you can see from these screenshots, we've got one showing the Google Sheet and how that looks. And then we have another that's actually showing our app. So Landon, if you want to take it away, I'll be fielding questions for the entire webinar. So please feel free to post in the chat. I'll be checking that and relaying those questions to Landon. So go ahead, Landon, take it off.
Absolutely. All right, guys. So we do have a couple objectives today. Want to cover a basic refresher on conditional expressions because that is really going to help us get into gear with our main topic, which is how to curate a user experience around a user table that you would develop within your AppSheet application. So the conditional expressions is going to be the backbone for that. We are going to show you how to build a robust user table and what are the primary criteria that you need for that. We're going to talk about customizing the user experience based off of that user table. And the end result is you're just going to feel like a boss. No, but in all sincerity, it really is a crucial topic because everybody who's creating an application, most application experiences are predicated on the personality of it. It's whenever you log into Facebook, you don't want to see everybody's data. You just want to see your data, right? And so today we're going to be talking about how to, as a developer, ensure that everybody is getting the most relevant user experience for them. So with all those things in mind, I will go ahead and share my screen and we will jump in. All right. Let's jump in here. Okay, so for starters, I want to demonstrate kind of the end product. We're going to be covering a couple of different things today. And there are so many different areas within AppSheet that can be customized through a user experience curation based off of this user table that we're going to be talking about. So I don't know that we're going to cover all of it, but I hope to give you the most prominent areas where I'm continually making changes in various apps that I'm building on a day-to-day basis. And hopefully you can extrapolate to some of those more peripheral use cases that would require user experience filtration. Okay, so for those of you that weren't on the last webinar that I led, we basically covered API workflows, and in order to demonstrate that, we made this time card application. The premise of which was whenever you're creating users, we wanted to essentially pre-populate a bunch of time cards for those users. So we created a handful of users, and AppSheet just generated a couple hundred records for every single user for I think about a year of time. So it should have been January 1st to December 31st of that year for the time cards. So that's kind of the background going into this, just to give the users the ability to edit their own time cards and for administrators to see what was going on there. Okay, so I want to start by kind of showing you three different user cases. So we've got a super admin, and the purpose of this user role is basically to show everything. The super admin should see everything, be able to edit anything, so on and so forth. We then have a second tier of user role, and that is going to be a just what we're calling an admin. So the purpose of an admin is that they're kind of like a team leader. They're going to see information from their team in their territory, but they shouldn't be able to see other team leaders' information. So we've got that role. And then we have just kind of your standard user, which we're calling non-admin. And the purpose, or within a non-admin role, you should really just be able to enter your own time cards. You shouldn't be able to see anybody else's, edit anybody else's. So that is kind of the experience that we're developing here. So I'm going to jump in and just show you from the super admin what's going to be seen. So I've got app at grease.solutions, and we'll just preview the app here to demonstrate this. Again, super admin should see everything. So we've got three different views here. We've got a user view, so they can edit user information. We see our different admin, super admin, and non-admin. So we've got the crew is the current account that I'm previewing as. So that's a super. And then we have CJ, who is an admin, and then Cameron, Clark, and Landon are non-admins.
Hey, Landon,
So
could you actually zoom in on this Google account?
Absolutely. I appreciate that. I do have a big monitor, and I'm actually zoomed out anyways. So there we go. Let's see. How does that look?
Maybe 125.
Yeah, that's 125. Does that work?
Yeah, this should be good.
Okay, excellent. All right. So like I was saying, we've got these three different user roles, and I was just explaining who's who. So right now we're just demonstrating the super. And so we've got visibility on this user view. We've got a time cards view, which should allow us to see everybody. So if I scroll up here to the top, I'll see CJ. And then as I go down, I should see other users. So I think that was, yep, that's Landon. And then I would obviously see my own time cards. Okay, so that is the time cards view. And then we have the schedule, which we were using to kind of pre-populate all the time cards as users were added. So that's that. Okay, moving onward, I want to show you briefly the admin user role. So this will be CJ at grease.solutions. And for CJ, because he's an admin, he only has access to one view. But what he will see is he will see time cards for him and his team. So anybody who is a non-admin on his team, he will also see here. And I think the only person that would be Landon. So we'll just scroll down to verify that. Once I get to December and then back to January. Okay, yeah, so we should see Landon right there. Okay, so that is CJ, and then we'll look at Landon, who is a non-admin. And so same thing here, just going to see the time card view, and I'm just going to see my time cards. I hit this edit button. I can just edit those. So there you go. That is the kind of the user experience that we're going for here. So briefly, I want to mention the different things that we're going to be covering today. So objective of showing you how to create a user table with attributes to validate against for this user experience. Secondly, we're going to, again, recover some of these conditional expressions. So we'll cover that second. Thirdly, we're going to talk about column constraints and how you can apply user filtration to who can see or edit certain columns or when certain columns should be required. Employing security filters based off of a user table will be number 4. 5 is going to be creating slices based off of a user table. 6 is going to be conditionally showing views based off of a user table. And lastly, we will cover conditionally showing actions based off of the user table. So that's a lot to get through. We'll see how much we can tackle in, the 30 more minutes that we have remaining. So if things are going too quickly and you need some clarification, please just reach out over the chat, and Clark can let me know if I need to re-explain anything. All right. So without any further ado, let's go ahead and jump into our user table. And right here, I just want to highlight the columns that you are going to need. Oh. All right. So the quintessential columns for a robust user table is going to be this. We need an email column. The reason for this is because every secure application within AppSheet requires that users log in with an email. And so we want to match up whatever email they're logging in with as a record in this user table. So we've got Stefan at Grease.solutions, App at Grease.solutions, Clark, so on and so forth. So this is a quintessential column. And this will likely be your key column in AppSheet. And it works out well because all emails are unique. So then we have the role column. So this is going to be another quintessential column if you're going to filter data. You don't have to call it role, but the idea is that you are specifying different user types or different roles within their app to help curate that user experience. This will allow us to validate against these values later on in the process. And then I've added an additional column here. Sometimes you will run into cases where you're having to maybe have another filter parameter than just a role. So maybe you're building a CRM for your sales team and you've got a territory or a region that you're dealing with. So in this case, I added an additional column so that we could also filter off of this. This is going to primarily impact the admin's user experience because the admin will not necessarily transcend a region. They would only be able to see non-admin's data within their region. So for example, here, CJ is an admin in the South. And earlier we saw that Landon, he could see Landon's information, who is a non-admin in the South. Okay, so that is our user table. And these are the columns that are going to be essential for us. Again, it's primarily email and some sort of role or user type or whatever you want to label that as. So now that we have seen an example of a user table, we're going to hit, again, a quick refresher on conditional expressions, because this is the backbone of everything that we're going to be doing. And conditional expressions are expressions that will result in either a true or a false value or a yes and a no at the end of the day. So I have panned over here to a tab that I had open from AppSheet's documentation on yes/no expressions. And I just want to cover a couple different things. So there are really three different types of comparisons that we're going to be making in these sorts of validating circumstances. So the first is going to be whenever you are comparing values to values. So I have a single value, could be a name, could be a number, whatever it is, and I'm trying to match that with a different value. And whenever we're doing that type of comparison, we have these sorts of operators. We have, equals to, not equals to, if it's numbers, greater than, less than, so on and so forth. And you also have things like contains, is blank, essentially, validates whether or not a column has any values in it. Those are for values matching or not matching. So that's comparing two values together. Then we have comparing a value with a list. That's the second type. And we're primarily going to use one expression for this, and that is the in expression. So a quick reminder on syntax for this: you're going to have the single value that you are trying to evaluate whether or not it's within a list, and then you're going to have a comma and then your list. So just to show that right here. So I always think about this. Same with contains, which is kind of a similar expression. You have your smaller piece, and then you have your bigger piece. So with contains, you may or may not have a list that you're searching through, but there should be something that is bigger than whatever you're trying to figure out is contained. So, and then in the list, you have the single value, and then you're comparing it with the list of values. Okay, so that is comparing a value with a list. Lastly, we have comparing two lists together, which is kind of challenging. So maybe you have two enum list columns that you're comparing, and you're wanting to know if there are overlapping values. So for this, AppSheet actually has a different expression that will help us validate in this type of circumstance. It's called intersect. And what intersect does is it returns a resulting list based off of two separate lists that you're trying to compare to one another. So in this case, we're intersecting this list, red, blue, and green, with the list orange and blue. And the result from this expression returns a list that has one value, and that value is blue. So the way that we turn this into a conditional expression, because again, AppSheet is going to require that rather than having a list, we need to have a true or a false value at the end of the day. So the way that we're going to turn this into a true or false value is by wrapping this in a count function. So the count will count the number of values that exist in a list. And we know that if there were any overlapping values, that the count would be greater than 0. So if we're interested in knowing if there is an overlap in two lists, we would say count, intersect, and we would put our two lists in there. And that should give us a yes or no value at the end of the day. Okay, so that's our brief refresher on conditional expressions, and this will help us as we move into conditional logic to kind of explain these different areas of user filtration. All right, so we've got our user table, and the first use case that we're going to try to tackle is constraining column constraints. And the reason I want to tackle this first is because oftentimes you will add a table into your AppSheet app, and the first thing that you do is you go into AppSheet and you try to make sure that all of your data types are correct, and you start populating any initial values or app formulas, things like that. You may also be interested in conditional show logic. And so we're going to go ahead and jump directly into that. So I've got our old application. This is prior to any changes that were made earlier that I demonstrated at the beginning of the webinar. And I'm going to show you here what our user table looks like. All right, and I actually need to regenerate the structure here because we did add that column for the region. Okay. All right, maybe this is going off of a different table. So let me just quickly look through here and see. Yes, it is. Okay, so what I'm going to do is copy our user table that we had earlier. And I'm going to replace it so that the schema reflects what we had in the other application. All right. Okay, so now I can come in here and I can regenerate my structure, and it should have that region column. Okay, and we're just going to quickly give these values. Should just be north or south are the two options. Those are the only two territories that we have. Okay, great. And we're going to put a column constraint on our hourly rate. Okay, so there are a couple different ways that we could go about this. We could either go in the detailed editor. You'll find that with the pencil icon right next to the column name. And just below the column name, you'll see our show section. So if you're just interested in showing it, kind of universally, you've got this little checkbox here. You can check or uncheck. But what we're interested in is actually filtering it based off of user information. So what we want to do is only show the hourly rate if the user is a super admin. Okay, again, that's our top tier of user type. So what we're going to do here, we know that we only want this to return true if the current user's role is admin. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to put admin because I know that's what we're setting things equal to. All right. And because we are comparing a value with a value, we're going to use an equals operator. All right. And sorry, this should actually be super. That is the type. All right. So super equals. And then the next question is, how do we get the current user's role? So in order to do this, we are going to do a lookup or an any select, which does a query on the user table. So I'm going to go ahead and select from the user table. And again, the column that I'm interested in is whatever column is going to have a matching value with this, or at least could have a matching value. And so that is going to be our role column. From that point, the next portion of our select expression is going to filter which rows we're interested in. And we're only interested in one row, and that is the current user's row. The way that we can define that is where the email column equals the current user's email, which AppSheet gives us in this expression. So we're going to be using this in many cases, and I'm actually going to show us a shortcut after this that will help us better or more easily reference the current user's information rather than always having to do this any select. Again, the reason that I'm wrapping this any around it is because the select always returns a list of values. But if I'm going to compare a value with a value and use the equals operator, I need this part on the right side of my equals operator to also be a value. So I'm going to extract that one value from the list by using this any function. All right. So that will conditionally show the hourly rate only if the user is a super admin. So I'm going to go ahead and save that change. All right. And we're just going to do a quick look here to verify that that actually happened, that it is making its modification according to what we were hoping. So I am now CJ, who's an admin, not a super admin, and I'm going to try to take a look at Landon's hourly rate. And as you can see, it is not there. And that is not a consequence of the view because we're not doing any sort of column constraints in the view itself. It is because we had a column constraint in the actual data component of our application. All right. So like I mentioned earlier, we're going to, I'm going to show you a shortcut that I'll often use to help us get user information, the current user's information. And in order to do this, I'm going to create a slice. So a slice is a subset of data from an existing table. And the table that I'm interested in retrieving information from is going to be the user table because I want the current user's information. And I'm just going to call this current user. The row filter condition on this is actually very simple. AppSheet is looking for a true false expression. Again, so we're in that conditional expression mentality. We've got, there's different ways to compare values together that will result in a true or a false. So in our case, we are interested in validating the email column, right? So, and what we're interested in is determining whether or not whatever record we're looking at is the current user. So again, all users are authenticating an AppSheet with an email that is unique. And so we're actually going to start by returning the current user's email. So user email, this function returns the current user's email, and we're going to set that equal to the email column, which will have, again, emails in every single row. So what this is doing, it's creating a slice from the user table that will only show whatever row is related to the current user, where the email column equals the current user's email. All right, and I've called that current user. So now I can reference that in other places within the application. Okay, so the next thing that we're going to cover is how do we employ security filters based off of our user table. So in order to do this, there are a couple of different places you can find security filters. You can either go directly to the security section, go to security filters, and find the table that you want to apply a security filter to. You can also go to the data tab, and under tables, you can just find your table here and go to the security dropdown. So the table that we're going to apply a security filter to is the time card table. All right, so this will be a rather complex security filter. And we're just going to approach it in stages here. So oftentimes, if you just have a role column, and maybe you're just interested in two different user types, you've got an admin and you've got a non-admin, then your expression here can be a little bit more simple. It could just be an if expression. And so we could have if, and then what we can do is determine if the current user is an admin. So what I'm going to do is reference the slice that I just created, any current user. I'm going to return the role column. And again, this is going to extract the role from the list of roles that would result from this table query. So any current user role equals admin. Oh, that's not how you spell admin. All right. And if this is true, if the current user is an admin, then you can either just put true, I want to show all records, or you can have more customization to it. But in this case, it may just be true. And if the current user is not an admin, then you may want them to only see time cards where the user equals user email. And the user column in the time card table is it is an email, which again is kind of, it's just a reference to our user table. So that's why that expression is working the way that it is. All right. Okay, so that is if you only have just two different user roles, and this is just a more an easier example of how to filter data. In our case, we are going for a little bit more complexity, because I would imagine some of you do have more extenuating use cases, and we're going to try to make an accommodation for that. Okay, so because we don't just have two options, we're going to use an ifs rather than an if. So this will allow us to have multiple value and result pairs. So what we're going to be doing here is doing kind of a continual lookup on the current user's role and setting it equal to a certain value. So we're validating, okay, is the user a super user? If so, then this is what they should see. If they're an admin, then this is what they should see. And if they're a non-admin, then this is what they should see. So an ifs expression is going to allow us to have that kind of complicated branch logic, if you will. All right. So first thing I'm interested in is I'm just going to start with the top tier of user. So any current user role equals super. And now I will tell AppSheet what the result should be if the user is a super user. And in this case, I'm just going to put true because I want them to see all data. The second user role is admin. And the admin is going to be a little bit more complicated here. So if the user is an admin, we want them to see either their data, which means that the user column should be set equal to their email. But we should also allow them to see their team's data. And this one is a little bit more challenging. So in order to identify whether or not the user is on their team, we are going to have kind of two conditions here. We're going to have the first one be that the, let's see here. Let me try to format this better. Okay, so the first one is if the user's region equals the current user's region. All right. So we are grabbing the region that is being dereferenced from the user column in the time card table, and we're setting that equal to the current user's region. Secondly, we don't want them to be able to see other admins. Well, really, we only want them to see non-admins on their team, right? So how we're going to validate that is if the user dot role equals non-admin. Okay, and AppSheet would require that both of these are fulfilled. So they're either going to see their data or they're going to see their non-admin team members' data. All right, so that is our admin user type. Finally, we'll have, I'm just going to say true here, but you could actually look up the non-admin type. Essentially what the if function is going to do is it's going to evaluate this first. And if this isn't true, then it's going to evaluate this. And then if that's not true, which we know the only other user type is non-admin, then it's going to evaluate this. So it's important to know the priority of these events because AppSheet, if it fulfills a certain condition, meaning the current user is a super user, then it's not even going to get to the rest of the expression here. It's not going to waste time going through that computational power. So we know that if it has gotten to this point, that the user is a non-admin. And so I'm just going to put true here. And now the result, if again, they are a non-admin, should be only that they can see their data. So user equals user email. Okay. So that is our most complicated expression of the day. We worked through these three different user types, and the admin was kind of a pest because there's a bit of branch logic in there. We're trying to help them see their data, but also their teams. All right. And again, the result of these functions, the ands and the ors, they're always resulting in a true or false, which is what AppSheet is looking for in these security filters. So it is going down every single row in the time card table, and it's applying this expression to each row. So each time that the user column is referenced, it's referring to the current row that it is evaluating through whenever it's going through this security filter. All right. So that is a security filter. Again, let's save our changes and quickly check if it did what we wanted it to do. All right, so in our time cards view, we should, let's see here. Let me actually make sure that these time cards are working here. All right, just trying to grab all the rows, and I forgot my shortcut to grab all the rows. So I'm just dragging this down. All right. Okay, so I'm going to copy this, and we're going to throw this in the other application, the time card section. All right, give it a second. All right, awesome. Okay, great. So I think we've got all of our data there, and now we can resync. Okay, great. And what we're looking at here is because CJ is an admin, we want him again to be able to see his data and his teams, which would be Landon, who is a non-admin. All right, so I'm just going to scroll down until I get to January again. All right, and Landon should be there, and there should not be any other users. So, yep, that finishes at December 31st. Okay, so our security filter did work, and we could go through the other user types to further validate that, but I think we're running short on time here, so we're going to keep chugging on. All right. We have already covered creating slices based off of a user table. We created a slice actually on the user table based off of the user's email. So we could, in the same way that we developed a security filter, we could apply the same type of expression to a slice for other tables. Again, the reason that we would do that is sometimes you want to have a specific view that may apply to a user type, but also give them full access to data in other parts of the app. So in that case, you would create a slice rather than a security filter. All right. Okay, so now how do we conditionally show views based off of a user table? All right, so in our demonstration application, we conditionally showed the user and the schedule table. So that's what we're going to do here. We're going to modify the user table, and we want this to only show if the user is a let's say admin or super admin, because an admin should also be able to see their team's data. So what we're going to do here is, because we have two values that we're kind of trying to accept, we could make that a list, and we can compare the current user's role with that list. And we know that if we're comparing a value with a list, we're going to use the in function. So I'm going to start with that. So in, and then I'm going to put my list that I'm validating against. So either the user is a super user or they are an admin. All right. Okay, so that is, again, the way the in function works. You have your smaller piece first, and then you have your larger piece second. So my list is actually going to go second here. So I'm going to put a comma, and before the comma, I want to put the current user's role, which is going to be the singular value. All right, so I'm going to reference my slice again. So any current user role, that is the column that I'm interested in. Okay, so if the current user's role is either a super or it's an admin, then they should see this view. And again, the way that I got there, I clicked on this view, I clicked the view hyperlink below the app, and it took me to the view editor. And so I scrolled down, and under the display dropdown, you will find the show if section. All right. Okay, so let's go ahead and save that and see if it worked. And in order to test this, you'll first see the admin. So CJ at Grease.Solutions. And now we're going to try Landon, because Landon is a non-admin. And we're going to see if he can see the user view. All right. And it has disappeared. So he would not be able to access that view. And so that is showing, conditionally showing views. And then finally, we have conditionally showing actions on or based off of the user table. So in our previous example, we had the ability to trigger payment. I think just due to the nature of that view, I think what we may rather do is try to modify the add button on the user table. So if I go back to CJ here, the idea behind this is that I would imagine super users should be able to add users, modify data, things like that. But we would maybe withhold those privileges from admins and non-admins. So in this case, I'm going to go to our user table or our user view, just that you can see these actions. So we've got the add action here. And then if I click into a record, we'll see the edit action for that record. So again, I want to restrict those to be only viewed or accessed by super users. Okay, so in order to do that, I'm going to navigate to our behavior section, and actions are categorized by table name in alphabetical order. So I'm going to find my user table, and I've got my add and edit buttons here. So the first one I'm going to modify is the add, and I'm going to scroll down to the behavior dropdown. And once I click that, I will see where it says only if this condition is true. So this allows me to input some conditional logic so that AppSheet can verify whether or not it should use or allow the current user to see this button and use that button. So again, the only user type that should see this is a super user. So I'm going to start with that. I'm going to start with the value that I want to validate against. And then I'm going to set it equal to the current user's role. So any current user. And I'm interested in retrieving the role column for the current user. All right. And I'm going to copy this because we're going to apply, we're going to apply the same expression to our edit button. All right. Okay, so let's save these changes and we'll give it a whirl. Okay, so again, CJ he's just an admin, so he should not be able to see the add or edit button. So there is no add button here, and we'll scroll into a record and we'll see that there is no edit button here either. So there you have it. We have conditionally shown our actions, and just to verify, we're going to look at app@grease.solutions, who is the super admin, and see whether or not he can see those actions. So we do have the add button here. And if we select a record, we do have the edit button. All right. So we have kind of gone through all the things that I wanted to demonstrate. And I will let Clark kind of reel us in, and we can maybe address any questions that people have or things like that.
Yeah, absolutely, guys. Landon, thank you so much for the awesome demonstration. I know that everyone learned a lot. I know I did. So we really appreciate you being able to do this for us. I'll give you a couple, maybe a minute or two to reel in some more questions. But in the meantime, if you don't already know, we are AppSheetTraining.com, powered by CrewTech. We do these webinars every week, or we try to do them every week. Sometimes things happen and we are delayed a week or two, but we try to put out as much content as we can for you guys, all free of charge, because we want to help you. But in order to keep these things free, we need, if you wouldn't mind, just hit that subscribe button, click the bell, let us know that you support us. Every single one counts, every single one matters. And it's why our boss lets us do this for you. If you have any other questions, Lana, if you wouldn't mind typing my email, clark@crewtech.com in that preview app as so they have somewhere to see it.
Yep.
That's my email. If you have any questions or if you have any future webinar topics that you want us to go over, that's where you want to shoot those, as well as in the comments on YouTube. Either myself or Cameron will be checking this. So we'd love to help you guys out with whatever you guys need, but we will need feedback in order to do so. But it looks like I'm not getting any questions, which really just means that Landon was on top of it and nailed that one out of the park. So big round of applause for him. I don't know if you mentioned it, Landon, during the webinar, but if you look at Landon's screen right now, you will see that I make the most hourly rate out of all the crew employees. I just felt like I needed to point that out.
It's true.
I did not change that. That's just, yeah.
It's just reality.
That's just the reality of it. So anyway, without further ado, I hope you guys have a wonderful rest of your Thursday or Friday, depending on where you are in the world. And we'll see you again either next week or the week after. I'll send out an email to let you guys know. All right.
Right
Y'all
on.
have a
Thanks,
great
Clark.
rest of your day.
All right. See you guys.